You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's October the 27th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. Good morning, Rev Cindy. How you doing?
Good morning, Al. I'm really well. How about yourself?
Not too bad, but I can tell you I'm going to be staying inside if it's going to stay as frosty as it was this morning for the whole day.
It's raining cats and dogs here, right? So I'm pretty much the same way. I am just, but I am thankful I live in Nova Scotia, Canada, and I am sending love to Jamaica, Cuba, and that area right now. They're being hit pretty hard.
I got my Jamaica hat on.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Thinking of Jamaica. Correct.
Yeah. Lots of love to them.
Yeah, Category 5 coming in today, I believe, is what's hitting them.
Yeah.
I saw that this morning. Yeah.
The eye has disappeared, so that makes everybody quite worried.
Yeah, just imagine. Exactly. So,
yep.
Yeah, all we have to worry about around here right now is just frost.
Yeah, it's raining here, but we need the rain here in Nova Scotia. So right now it's a blessing.
Yeah.
And again, thankful I live here in Nova Scotia, Canada versus Jamaica or Cuba at the moment.
Yeah. All righty. What's anything new and exciting?
All kinds of new and exciting stuff. And I asked you beforehand if I could do some self plugs. I sit on the board for the Nova Scotia Psychedelic Society here in Nova Scotia, obviously. And as you guys can see by my name here, I am an earth medicine facilitator, which is one of the reasons they asked me to sit on the board. We're doing some exciting stuff. We're having a speaker series here in Nova Scotia, in Halifax. Our first speaker series starts Thursday night. It's going to be at the Halifax Library. And we have an amazing human coming in from the Holos group of people talking about the psychedelic renaissance. So I invite you to come. It's free and open to the public. We will be streaming it, and I will be sharing the streaming information as we go along. Good. And what I find really exciting about this is we do have a series. We have four speakers set up, and I am your second speaker coming up on November 17th. And I will be speaking about the psychedelic medicines I use and I support and I serve. What they are good, what use they are for us as humans and what they can help combat, and integrity behind serving the medicine.
And where are all these being held at?
At the Halifax Public Library in the BMO room. And it is free. We ask you to show up a few minutes ahead of time. Speeches usually last between 30 and 40 minutes, giving us 20 to 30 minutes for questions and answers. We will be streaming. So there will be questions coming in from around the world, and we're trying to hook up with other psychedelic societies as well as Mark's Conscious Living Network and stream out as much as we possibly can. We've got some pretty interesting people coming up.
Super. I think you may be surprised by the people who show up, the amount of people, because there's so many people still in the psychedelic closet.
Yeah, well, we've been receiving a lot of messages asking and making sure that we will be streaming the speaker series for people. We're specifically getting questions from people in Nova Scotia. We're not a big province, but it still would take everybody. A lot of people that are asking questions 5 or 6 hours to get to downtown Halifax if they're coming from either end of Nova Scotia. So I'm excited that we will be streaming it. I'm nervous. Speaking in front of that many people and on air. I mean, I do it 3 times a week via us, but Besides us sitting here, I don't have people sitting in front of me, so it's easier.
The saying is, just imagine everybody being naked, and that way you'll put a smile on your face instead of being worried.
Yeah, so it's really exciting. I am really excited to be part of it, and I'm really excited to promote it. And we're hoping to get information out there and get a conversation started here in Nova Scotia.
Good. All right. Yeah. When you get it going along, like closer to when you're speaking and all that, make sure you bring it up again. And let everybody know what's going on. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Talking about what's going on, let's get on to the news.
Yeah.
Here we go. First story is up.
Coming to us from Marijuana Moment, cannabis companies ask U.S. Supreme Court to take up case challenging constitutionality of federal prohibition.
A coalition of cannabis companies has filed a petition asking the U.S. Supreme Court to take up their case challenging the constitutionality of federal prohibition. About 2 months after the court accepted an application for an extend the filing deadline, the law firm Boyle Schiller Flexner LLP, that's representing the company, submitted the petition for writ of certiorari on Friday.
The case from Massachusetts-based cannabis companies and industry leaders, Canada Provisions, Geisey Cellars, Wiseacre Farm, Verano Holdings, they argue that the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution precludes the federal government from enforcing criminalization laws against interstate cannabis activity. To that end, they want justices to reevaluate a landmark 2005 case, Gonzalez versus Reich, wherein the Supreme Court narrowly determined that the federal government could enforce prohibition against cannabis cultivation that took place wholly within California based on Congress's authority to regulate interstate commerce.
The new Supreme Court petition argues that the Reich decision was an abbreviation in the court's decisions or court's precedents on the Commerce Clause, a necessary and proper clause, and represents a drastic departure from the federalism principles those clauses embody. The ruling 2 decades ago permitted a dramatic intrusion in the exercise of the state's police powers, it says.
Yeah, just something completely separate. 2005. I never think of that as 2 decades ago, and that just made me feel old. The Controlled Substances Act significance to the exercise of the state's policy powers is massive, and even greater today than it was in Reich's time, when only 9 states had legalized cannabis, the petition says. 38 states have now decided that the health and safety of their citizens is better served by making cannabis available through regulated channels than through prohibition. The CSA displaces those states' choices and imposes Congress's own views on interstate policy. The serious federalism questions raised by that intrusion warrant the court's attention now, as they did in Rock. The petition says that after the Rock decision was issued, the federal government has undermined the notion of any link between the CSA's interstate goals and its interstate prohibitions.
Since 2014, Congress has barred enforcement against state-regulated medical cannabis, but not adult-use cannabis, while leaving both prohibited under the CSA. State-regulated medical cannabis is therefore less regulated from a federal perspective than the least controlled Schedule 5 substances in the CSA. The DOJ has taken non-enforcement even further, with the policy of not enforcing the CSA as to either state-regulated medical or adult-use cannabis. This long period of desuetude, I can't even pronounce that word, has served any link between controlling state-regulated cannabis and regulating interstate commerce, therefore rendering the CSA's intrusion on the state's policy making even more stark. A U.S. appeals court rejected the arguments of the state legal cannabis companies in May. It was one of the latest blows to the high-profile lawsuit following a lower court's dismissal of the claims, but it's widely understood that the plaintiff's legal team has long intended the matter to end up before the 9 high court justices.
4 justices must vote to accept the petition for cert in order for the court to take up the case. While it remains to be seen whether Scouts will ultimately take the case, one sign that at least some on court might be interested in the appeal is a 2021 statement from Justice Clarence Thomas, issued as the court denied review of a separate dispute involving a Colorado medical cannabis dispensary. Thomas's comments at the time seemed to suggest it would be appropriate to revisit RUC, a move that could upend federal prohibition.
The statement pointed to policy development since the earlier case was decided, such as the hands-off enforcement approach taken by the Department of Justice, as more states legalized cannabis in a congressional budget rider protecting state legal medical cannabis programs. Now, Thomas wrote that whatever the merits of RUC when it was decided, federal policies of the past 16 years have greatly undermined its reasoning. He was describing the government's approach to cannabis enforcement as a half-in, half-out regime that simultaneously tolerates and forbids local use of cannabis.
Through federal law, though federal law still flatly forbids the interstate possession, cultivation, or distribution of cannabis, the government, post-RUC, has sent mixed signals on its views. The justice continues, saying the situation strains basic principles of federalism and conceals traps for the unwary. The initial complaint in the current case, now known as Canada Provisions versus Bondi, filed in U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts, argued that government's ongoing prohibition on cannabis under the Controlled Substances Act was unconstitutional because Congress in recent decades has dropped any assumption that federal control of state-regulated cannabis is necessary.
At oral argument on appeal late last year, David Boyce told judges that under the Constitution, Congress can only regulate commercial activity within a state, in this case around cannabis, if the failure to regulate that in-state activity would substantially interfere with or undermine legitimate congressional regulation of interstate commerce. Boyce, chairman of the firm, has a long list of prior clients that includes the Justice Department, former Vice President Al Gore, and the plaintiffs in a case that led to the invalidation of California's ban on same-sex marriage, among others.
Judges, however, said they were unpersuaded, ruling in an opinion that the CSA remains fully intact as to the regulation of the commercial activity involving cannabis for non-medical purposes, which is the activity in which the appellants, by their own account, are engaged. The district court, meanwhile, said in the case that while there are persuasive reasons for re-examination of the current scheduling of cannabis, its hands were effectively tied by the past U.S. Supreme Court precedent in RUC.
This comes in the background of pending cannabis rescheduling decision from the Trump administration. President Donald Trump said in late August that he'd make a determination about moving cannabis Schedule 3 of the CSA within weeks, but he's not yet to act. Meanwhile, this week, the Supreme Court agreed to hear a separate case on the constitutionality of a federal law prohibiting people who use cannabis or other drugs from buying or possessing firearms. The Trump administration has argued that the policy targets a category of persons who pose a clear danger of misusing firearms and should be upheld. Huh?
Wow, that's it. That's a relatively short marijuana moment story.
It sure was.
I had to scroll a couple of times to make sure I really? Okay.
Really? Yeah,
That's
unfortunately, mine's the one that's on the screen, so I got to do it when everybody's watching. I was surprised too. Wait, that's done already? Good.
We're not repeating it 5 times?
All right. On to the next story. Here we go. What's up?
Yes, coming to us from Leafy. Combining cannabis and tobacco linked to mental health issues, the study shows.
People who use both cannabis and tobacco together have different brain chemistry when compared to people who only use cannabis. And the difference is linked to higher levels of anxiety, depression, and relapse into addiction, a new study claims. The findings come from a study published in the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence Report, where researchers from McGill University at the Douglas Research Center examined brain scans from 13 young adults and found significantly higher levels of fatty acid amide hydrolase, which is FAAH, in those who use both substances compared to cannabis-only users.
FAAH is an enzyme that breaks down the endocannabinoid anandamide, often called the brain's bliss molecule, due to its role in mood regulation. Researchers used data taken from a previous study which analyzed the brains of 8 young adults who smoked cannabis only and 5 who co-used cannabis and tobacco. The cannabis-only group smoked an average of 1.5 grams per day and had been using cannabis for an average of 4.5 years. The co-using group smoked, on average, 1.3 grams of cannabis per day and smoked an average of 6 cigarettes per day with an average of 4.8 years of cannabis use. Using a powerful, go ahead.
Using a powerful positron emission tomography imaging tool and the radio tracer called CURB, researchers examined areas of the brain that contained overlapping nicotine and cannabinoid receptors. They found an imbalance in those who used tobacco and cannabis, which could result in less natural mood regulation and greater vulnerability in stress and relapse. Levels of FAAH were found to be significantly higher in those who co-used tobacco and cannabis, and higher levels of FAAH equal lower levels of anandamide. Big word.
This is like, I find this quite interesting. Higher FAAH levels mean lower concentrations of this molecule, creating an imbalance that affects the brain's natural reward and pleasure systems. This disruption may leave co-users more vulnerable to stress and increase their risk of relapse when attempting to quit. Wow. This mechanism, the study says, could help identify the reason why co-users of tobacco and cannabis tend to have greater difficulty giving up cannabis. Why wouldn't you just give up the tobacco instead? And experience more instances of depression and anxiety than those who use cannabis alone.
This is the first evidence in humans of a molecular mechanism that may underlie why people who use both cannabis and tobacco experience worse outcomes, says the lead author, Rachel Rabin, who's associate professor at McGill. Now, for those who don't know, I didn't mention earlier, McGill is in Montreal, McGill University. Identifying this mechanism is an important step towards finding targets for future medications to treat cannabis use disorder, especially among those that co-use tobacco. Right now, the only available treatments are behavioral therapies such as counseling.
Or they could treat the addiction to the tobacco and all the chemicals that are in tobacco and leave the cannabis alone. That I didn't realize we were getting into that. That blows my mind. One of the drawbacks of the study, a result of collating the data from a previous study, was the absence of a tobacco smoking only control group. Researchers acknowledged this and plan further research, which will involve one as well as a cannabis only group and a cannabis and tobacco co-use group. I'm curious if when they talk about this, are we talking about people who smoke on a regular basis or people that only smoke with their joints or their bongs, right?
Yeah, correct. You're talking about like poppers, for example.
Poppers, or I mean, like, you know, when I smoke cigarettes, I mean, like when I rolled my joints, I always had tobacco in there. So I'm wondering if they're talking about people who like roll with it only, or people that use it regularly and roll with it. Or
they used people that said, they talked about cannabis only smokers, and then they talked about the cannabis and tobacco. They talked about how much they consumed. 1.3 grams average a day and an average of 6 cigarettes.
But I mean, I still want to know, like, are they smoking their cigarettes after their joints, or are they smoking their cigarettes in their joints?
Well, I'm looking as people who smoke both tobacco and cannabis separately. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The study the study claims to be the first to investigate differences in FAAH levels in the brain between people who use cannabis and people who co-use the two substances that are commonly combined.
Co-author Romana Meiser, professor of psychiatry and director of the McGill Research Center for Cannabis, noted the strength of the findings. What surprised us was how strong the effect was and how different it was for those who only used cannabis compared to those who used both tobacco and cannabis. The researchers found significantly higher FAH levels in people who used both cannabis and tobacco compared to cannabis-only users, particularly in two key brain regions, the substantia nigra and cerebellum. The differences were substantial, with what researchers described as large effect areas.
Importantly, the study showed that higher tobacco consumption was directly linked to higher FAAH levels in these brain areas, meaning the more cigarettes someone smoked, the higher their FAA levels. However, cannabis use alone showed no such relationship with FAAH levels, suggesting that tobacco is the driving factor behind the elevated enzyme actively in co-users. The results support previous research which identified a correlation between tobacco and cannabis co-use and poor mental health outcomes. A 2023 analysis of data from over 50,000 U.S. citizens found that the risk of anxiety and depression doubled when cannabis and tobacco were used together.
There you go. Now, in one of those paragraphs, it said here, meaning that more cigarettes someone smoked. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take that as people who just smoke cigarettes and smoke cannabis separately.
Yeah.
And so there you go. Yeah, I saw that headline yesterday and I thought, wow, what's this all about? Gotta look into that. So, okay, here we go. We'll just move along on to the next story. Did you have to say anything else to say? Anything else you want to say about the last one?
There's a lot. Like I have been following these popper things that the young group is doing. And it's the physicalities that I've noticed with it. I mean, we know that cannabis is a medicine. We know that it goes into the lungs and it helps to open the lungs fully and it helps us to breathe better. And whatever we're doing to our bodies when we inhale the hot smoke, we're helping to heal at the same time. Cannabis is in there doing the work. If you combine that with tobacco, remember, the cannabis is going to go in there and it's going to open up your whole lungs. It's going to make everything open and everything wonderful. And that allows tobacco, and not just the tobacco that we have learned over years that tobacco, modern day tobacco is full of carcinogens. It's full of, and they put rat poison in there. They put all kinds of chemicals and crap in there. So when you open up your lungs, now you're allowing all of those chemicals and all of those carcinogens into every point of your lungs. I don't care if you're smoking the cigarette with it, like poppers are rolling into your joints, or if you're smoking a joint and then you follow it up with a cigarette. Your lungs are still open at that point in time, and you're allowing all those carcinogens to get in there. So it doesn't surprise me that it's now been linked to mental health.
Yeah. I know. It's just
to give my 2 cents.
I could never understand why people would mix tobacco with cannabis.
Well, when I was younger, we weren't always guaranteed to have good weed, and it didn't burn properly. So, like, I found when I was a cigarette smoker, putting a little bit of tobacco in there helped it burn beautifully. I actually choked less with chemicalized weed than I did if I rolled just a joint. Yeah, so and it made the joints bigger, made them last longer, blah 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 blah. So there were reasons, but as I quit smoking cigarettes and moved on and learned more, it was just like, oh, look at what I did to myself all those years. And
if you light a cigarette now, within the first 2 or 3 puffs, your friggin' head would be spinning in circles.
Oh, listen, I work with mapacha, which is indigenous, grown and prayed over tobacco. Now, it has none of the chemicals in it. The only chemical in there is the nicotine. And I use that for smudging people in certain ceremonies. And we don't inhale it because it's that strong. So you just bring it in, but you still get the nicotine in your system. And man, oh man, a few puffs of that for smudging. And woo!
can just imagine. I can just imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Here we go. On to the next story.
On to the next story. Coming to us from International Cannabis Business Conference. CBD may reduce systolic blood pressure.
High blood pressure is a serious public health issue facing the world today. International researchers estimate that roughly 1.4 billion adults aged 30 to 79 years worldwide have high blood pressure or hypertension, representing 33% of the population in this age range. Now, hypertension can lead to a variety of health problems, including but not limited to heart attack, stroke, heart failure, aortic aneurysm, kidney damage, glaucoma, dementia, diabetes, obesity, and even death.
Absolutely. A team of investigators based in Brazil and affiliated with various health and academic research institutions recently examined CBD use and how it may impact systolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure means the pressure in the person's arteries when the heart beats and pumps blood throughout the body. It is the upper number in a blood pressure result. The systematic review and meta-analysis assess the effects of cannabinoid oil, CBD, on systolic and diastolic blood pressure in humans. A comprehensive search in PubMed, Cochrane Library, Scopus, and Emboss databases up to May 2024 identified 4 randomized controlled trials comprising 104 participants, 3 assessing short-term administration, and 1 chronic use in hypertensive individuals. This is stated by the researchers about their investigation, and the researchers published their findings in the journal Brazilian Journal of Pharmacognosy.
Meta-analysis demonstrated a significant reduction in systolic blood pressure after acute cannabinoid intake, but no sufficient change in diastolic blood pressure. Chronic administration promoted reductions of 7.01 mmHgs in systolic and 4.55 in the diastolic blood pressure, the researchers found. These findings suggest that cannabinoid may benefit blood pressure control, specifically with prolonged use in hypertension patients, but further high-quality randomized controlled trials are required to approve this efficacy, safety, and clinical availability to cardiovascular care, the researchers concluded.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I know that several years ago, and I'm going to say probably a decade ago or two, I was talking to a doctor, a new doctor in the clinic we were at, and she saw me reading a Treating Yourself magazine, and she told me that cannabis would lower my blood pressure. And I said, well, what do you do about lower blood pressure? High blood pressure, you're on medications. What about low blood pressure? What do you do then? And she says, call us when you faint. She said, yeah, I've had that high number. I've seen it 90 and 95 on mine. Yeah.
Yep. My father has had high blood pressure and has been on medicine for a long time. And he got diagnosed with cancer a few years ago, and I got him taking CBD. And then his blood pressure started going down, like down, down, down. And he recently found out, probably about 2 weeks ago, that whatever he's been doing has been helping. And the doctor said, stop taking the blood pressure medicine. You don't need it. That's what's screwing up your blood pressure. But he's been taking CBD for 5 years every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the big difference, right?
Yeah. The study, and you got a person living in your house that says yes, that study's accurate. Way to go. It's always good to see stuff like that. So.
It is.
All right, last story before we go to break.
Yeah, coming to us from Mugglehead Magazine. Manitoba cannabis revenue growing at a faster pace than liquor sales.
Manitoba residents have been spending an increasing amount of money on legal cannabis products. Revenue growth in the province's cannabis sector has been significantly outpacing alcohol sales and gambling. This was a key finding of the latest annual report from the Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. Therein, the Provincial Crown Corporation reported a $16.5 million or a 10.7% year-over-year increase in cannabis revenue between March the 31st, 2024 to the end of the first quarter of this year. That total came to $170 million during the 12 months. Alcohol only yielded $14.24 million more, while casinos generated $11 million more than the previous fiscal year. Sorry, Cindy.
So no, that's okay. The province Crown Corporation reported 16.5 million year-to-year increase compared to 14.2. So I mean that's still close, but we're beating it by over 2 million, and
Correct.
only 11 million for the casinos, which is pretty. Like, I mean, we're doing good. These things are growing as fast, and that means that the natural medicine's doing what it needs to do.
Exactly.
While alcohol continues to be the top revenue generator for Manitoba for now, pulling in $888 million during the period, the latest data has shown that cannabis's popularity is growing significantly faster than booze and gambling. This boost of reefer revenue, I love it, was largely fueled by purchases of extracts and flower. It can be significantly credited to a greater number of stores throughout the province.
Extract sales rose by 19.6% year over year to $59.8 million, while flower generated almost $66 million of the total. As of March 31st, there were 229 dispensaries in Manitoba, 24 more than the previous year. There you go.
Nice.
Okay.
Go Manitoba. One thing that I will say here, like we've got our cannabis dispensaries are in back closets of our liquor stores. And I stopped in this morning when I was out running around just to get a few pre-rolls because I've got people coming this afternoon and I didn't want to waste time rolling. I just wanted some pre-rolls and I was out. So I stopped into the liquor store, which is just up the road from me, and go back to the cannabis closet. And I went back. So two things I noticed when I was there. The liquor store, which is usually overly full, they usually have all the shelves full right back to the back, especially this time of year, getting ready to come into November and blah, blah, blah. And then they usually have all kinds of things piled in boxes all around the store. That store was virtually empty. Like the shelves were not full and there was nothing piled on the floor. Absolutely nothing. There was one person working in the entire liquor store, no customers. I get back to the cannabis closet. There's 3 people working and a lineup of customers.
That's good news. That's good news.
That was beautiful as far as I'm concerned. I was talking with one lady who's the manager of the local liquor store, actually, and she says, "You want to know what ice?" Because we were talking about how alcoholics, recovered alcoholics now have to go past this and blah blah blah. She goes, "You know what?" She goes, "Give it 5 years." She goes, "I see this being the cannabis side, and we'll stick booze in the back of the closet." And I'm like, your word, your lips to creator's ears. Here's hoping.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting change, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a few years later, we've had our store here for about 2 years. So 2 years later, and you can see the beginning of her prediction actually happening.
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, we've got to go. It's medication time. We're right back. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Hey, we're back, or I'm back. I see Cindy's not. You're watching Psychedelics Cannabis Educational News. We're live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca. But I'm not sure where Cindy is.
Cindy's here.
Cindy's here.
Cindy took so long coming back. That's her fault. My apologies.
Hey, it happens occasionally, right?
It does.
You know, if we weren't live, I'd just edit it out. Nobody would know any difference, right?
And nobody would know. But we're live, so y'all got to see me return from getting a drink of water. You know?
Yeah. You get the bloopers as well as the news.
Yeah, all in one.
All in one, exactly.
All in one.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, coming to us from Marijuana Moment. Ohio Health Agency grants $400,000 to fund psychedelics education and training for first responders, doctors, and more.
That's fantastic. An Ohio Health Agency is providing a state university with $400,000 grant to educate first responders, law enforcement, emergency departments, and behavior specialists about how to deal with potential adverse psychedelics experiences as more people use the substances for medical or recreational purposes. Amid the expanding psychedelics reform movement, there's been an increased attention to the possible health effects or benefits of substances like psilocybin and ibogaine, but only a handful of states allow for the regulated use of certain psychedelics, typically in medically supervised settings.
Ohio is not among those states yet, but Ohio State University is now launching its Psychedelic Emergency, Acute, and Continuing Care Education PEACE initiative, with nearly $500,000 of funding from the State Department of Behavioral Health's SOAR Innovation Grant Program. People have started to learn about the benefits of psychedelics, while at the same time, the federal government categorizes these as controlled substances. This is coming from Stacey Armstrong, who's the Associate Director of the OSU's Center for Psychedelic Medicine Research and Education. And she said this in a press release last week.
And she says, with the promising outcomes of clinical trials, there has been an explosion of information, but the information has been limited in addressing adverse experiences and harm reduction. Now, funding from the DBH grant will go towards in-person seminars and online training materials that will be made available to those in professions most likely to face instances where someone might need attention after using psychedelics outside of a medical regulatory framework. The seminars and educational materials will come at no cost to qualifying participants.
We want to arm our first responder and behavioral health workforce with knowledge about how to support someone's challenging psychedelic experience in a way that's going to be helpful, not increase risk or harm, Armstrong said, adding that the center created the psychedelics program to start educating Ohio's frontline workers and support them in facilitating quality care, psychedelic-informed crisis triage, and referral guidance to healthcare providers with specialized training in psychedelic harm reduction. According to the CPDRE, the Peace Initiative is intended to reach over 127,000 professionals across the state, which will also include doctors, nurses, social workers, psychiatrists, and other disciplines.
CPDRE is all about access and affordability. Tina Romalia, CPDRE's program coordinator, said, "Too much information in this space is inaccessible, unaffordable, or inaccurate. Our job is to make it all three: accessible, affordable, and accurate."
Yeah. With funding now secured for the PEACE program, the center says psychedelics education seminars will now be held in January, March, and July of next year. We've created this content, but its value depends on reaching the people who need it. Angela Douglas, who is the CPDRE Clinical Research Coordinator, she says, with DBH's network and workforce enterprises, we're confident we can get this training to every corner of the state.
They have extensive connections. Their workforce development and policy leads are actively recruiting, gathering information. So we're talking to the right people to make sure this gets to where it needs to go. Now, the OCU's efforts complement research it's done in the past, including one study conducted in conjunction with the Johns Hopkins University in 2023 that found an association between psilocybin use and persisting reductions in depression, anxiety, and alcohol misuse, as well as increases in emotional regulation, spiritual well-being, and extroversion.
While Ohio voters approved adult use cannabis legalization in 2023, there's been little interest so far within the legislature to pass psychedelics reform. That's despite the fact that the legislatures in red and blue states alike, as well as in Congress, have seen multiple efforts to advance the issue in recent years. And this is the second short marijuana moment.
I know. I thought the same thing. I checked during the break. I thought, geez, that one's another short one, 2 in one show. All right.
Have they decided to stop typing so much over there? I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I know if it was going to print, they wouldn't have super long ones. So this print costs money. Thanks for the thumbs up, Bob. We appreciate it. Okie dokie. We're time to move on to our next story of the day. And there you go.
Coming to us from Cannabis Science and Technology, Cannabis and Pupil Response. Study examines eye measurements after recent inhalation.
Yeah. Measuring the size of pupils may be useful in assessing acute cannabis inhalation, a recent study suggests. Now, pupil measurement and eye changes have been used by law enforcement to assess impairment from cannabis, the study notes, examining that some previous studies have used pupillometer technology to objectively measure changes in the pupils. This current study aimed to use this technology to measure pupil sensitivity and size of pupils after recent cannabis inhalation. Now, pupillary dynamics as a marker of acute cannabis inhalation was published in Clinical Toxicology in September 2025. And the work was supported through funding from the National Institute on Drug Abuse.
Wow. Out of 126 participants, 95 were able to complete all of the assessments. The participants inhaled cannabis as often as desired, and after 15 minutes, their pupils were measured using the NeuroOptics PLR 3000 Measurements were taken at baseline and at 40 minutes and 100 minutes following the cannabis inhalation. The cannabis, either flower or concentrate products, was provided by the participants themselves. For comparison, 30 of these participants completed the same assessments at the same time points without cannabis.
For pupil size, sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy were calculated to find a combination of the most accurate and predictive metrics. At least absolute shrinkage and selection operator model was used. Now, the percentage change in pupil size after cannabis use was demonstrated to have the highest area under the curve, specifically 0.73 at 40 minutes and 0.75 at 100 minutes.
What was it at baseline, though?
I don't know.
Additional results included individual measures were more predictive than considering variables together in a lasso model. Compared with the control group, cannabis inhalation was not associated with reliable changes in maximum pupil size when measured in darkness. Diminished pupil dynamics, including pupil response to light, were more predictive of cannabis use. Pupillary dynamics, when measured with an objective test, may contribute to providing an indication of recent cannabis inhalation, the researchers concluded.
Now, previous studies have examined methods of assessing cannabis intoxication from sources other than inhalation. In proof of concept study published in 2025, researchers at the National Institute of Standards and Technology measured changes in concentrations of THC and other cannabinoids on participants' breath after ingestion of edibles. The study was part of a larger study to gauge impairment while driving, noting the lack of reliable methods of assessing impairment from THC.
In this study, 29 participants ingested cannabis edibles of their choice. One of 2 breath sampling devices were used at 3 time points over 3 hours. THC concentrations were found to have varied after ingestion. Other results included 19 participants showed a significant increase in THC concentration at any time point. 4 participants showed no change. 6 showed a significant decrease in THC concentration, and the variability between CBD and THC trends suggested differences in biological processing.
This study did not compare THC concentration and THC dose, which was suggested for further studies. They say that this study supports the idea that multiple breath measurements over a period of time could be a way to use a breathalyzer to detect cannabis use, regardless of how it's ingested, explained Tara Lovestead, a NIST chemical engineer, in a news release on the study. She says, however, devices will still need standards to ensure that they are accurate and used correctly in standards that don't yet exist. And when you look at that, the results, 6 show significant THC concentration decrease. You wouldn't, things are.
Everybody was different in that. So
some didn't show any change at all.
Some went up. And it's the same as the fact that the pupils, there's not enough difference in the pupils to say you can look at somebody's eyes and know if they're high. Which is what they used to do. I remember going to shows when I was a teenager, going into whether it be different shows at 16, 18, 19, whether it was bars or into concert halls. And I remember having we walk in and they check your eyes, especially if you're wearing sunglasses. I remember being, I wasn't wearing sunglasses, but I remember being behind people that were asked to lift their sunglasses. And so at one point in time, we really were looking at people's eyes to see if they were high.
Glossy, bloodshot, all that stuff. So.
Huge pupils, right?
Okay, on to the next story.
Coming to us from Leafy. Zurich seeks to extend legal cannabis pilot until 2028.
Zurich City Council has applied to extend its legal cannabis dispensary program until 2028. 2 years beyond its original end date after declaring the pilot project a success. The Zero Can project, which began in 2025 or 2023, has attracted more than 2,300 participants who have purchased approximately 750 kilograms of cannabis through 88,000 legal sales, the city announced on Monday.
Okay. City officials said the extension would cost CHF euros 690,000 euros. I can understand that one a little bit more. And be 690, that would be an extra three. It'd be over $1 million Canadian, and highlighted the program's impact on the illegal drug trade. Around 7.5 CHF million have been withdrawn from the black market, the city stated. Andreas Hari, the city councillor overseeing the project, emphasized that the pilot study focuses on health and protecting users from the risks of the black market. The program is supervised by the Psychiatric University Clinic Zurich.
The federal government approved an expansion of the program in July of 2025, increasing the maximum number of participants from 2,100 to 3,000. City authorities are now particularly keen to attract occasional users and women who remain underrepresented in the current participant base. The original study was scheduled to conclude in 2026, but the city's application seeks to extend the operations for an additional 2 years to gather more comprehensive data on the program's long-term effects.
The Zurican project represents one of a number of cannabis trials taking place across Switzerland as the country explores national legalization. In September of 2025, so just last month, lawmakers opened a public consultation on draft legislation that would allow adults to grow up to 3 cannabis plants at home, purchase cannabis from state-licensed not-for-profit retailers, and possess and consume the medicine legally.
Now, the Social and Health Committee of the National Council submitted the draft Cannabis Products Act for consultation on August the 29th, with interested parties having until December the 1st to respond. If approved, the law could take effect by September of 2026.
Wow. Exciting.
Yeah. Success. They're calling it a success. So,
yep.
And if, if it wasn't a success, you could sure pretty well guarantee that the program would have been shut down instead of extending.
Yeah, they wouldn't be extending it. No.
All righty. Last story of the day. Here we go.
Yeah. Coming to us from International Cannabis Business Conference, Panama to register medical cannabis products.
Back in the summer of 2021, Panama's National Assembly unanimously approved a measure that sought to regulate the use of medical cannabis. The approval of the medical cannabis legalization measure was historic for both Panama and the region at the time. Unfortunately, implementation of the measure has languished ever since, with lawmakers and regulators struggling to set up the framework to launch a regulated medical cannabis industry in the Central American nation. Thankfully, a big implementation milestone was recently achieved in Panama.
The Minister of Health, MINSA, through the National Director of Pharmacy and Drugs, issued resolution number 372 of September 26, 2025, which establishes the requirements to opt for the exception to the sanitary registration of products containing medical cannabis and its derivatives. This is reported in local news coverage. According to the resolution, finished products containing THC exclusively for medical use may qualify for this exception. Authorization will be granted under the guidelines of the National Program for the Use of Medical Cannabis, administered by the National Drug Control and Drug Administration, the outlet also reported.
Now, in January 2024, Panama's government approved medical cannabis manufacturing licenses for 7 companies. However, just because those companies were granted licenses to produce products, there still needed to be regulations in place to register finished products before they can be sold in the emerging legal market. Currently, banking, commerce, and tourism are major sectors in Panama's economy. A significant contributor to Panama's economy is the Panama Canal, with the canal making Panama a major player in international trade and logistics. As a successful medical cannabis industry will further boost economic opportunities in the Central American nation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a long time. They've been waiting years for this program.
Yep.
Wow. That's too bad. A lot of patients have been suffering that could have been helped.
Yep.
Yep. So, well, hopefully they got this step. Hopefully the rest of the steps are already underway, and they don't get too much more in the way of delays. So,
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, look at that. We got it done under the wire even after all that talk.
Wow. Look at us. That's because Marijuana Moment has shortened this.
Maybe, eh? But they always have good articles, and
they do.
Yeah, they are long. Like I said, if they were in print, it might be a different story because it takes so much paper, right?
Yeah.
Costs money, which is weight when it comes to deliveries, all that stuff. So
yeah.
All righty. Well, anything else before we sign off and say goodbye?
I don't think so. But if you're not doing anything Thursday night and you live in Nova Scotia, come on down to the BMO room at the Halifax Library and catch our first speaker series here. And if you can't, we will be sharing the link, and I invite you to join in and watch.
And you will be sharing the link to your Facebook page?
I will be sharing the link to my Facebook page. Of course, I'll be sharing it over to Mushy Moment, and I'll make sure that we share it in the Pace newsroom and the Pace rooms as well.
Oh, all right. Sounds good. All right. That's a news report for today. And for our buds at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City Hydroponics.ca and At-Eze.ca. And in closing, as always, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.